Good evening. So I just finished a Create Space online class, and sure, today was a bit chaotic and I struggled a bit with the recording system earlier today. So I've made my collages. We're going to collage today and I'm going to talk you through the collages, but I want to mainly speak about the theme for today and then do a guided exploration, a guided meditation, and then I'll show you some examples of what I did and just give you some prompts and some ideas, but I'm not going to do the exercise with you because collaging takes quite some time. So I wanted to finish some examples for you for today. So the topic for today is creative ancestry, and this is a very important place to start when you're unblocking and unlearning things that are standing in your way for you to be more creative. Because often in our family, in our friend structure, when we grew up, there were very specific patterns and ideas ingrained into us with regards to creativity and how we understand and relate to our creativity. So we're going to connect to the creative patterning that we witnessed in our core family, in our family, and when we were children. So really looking at the patterns that were formed long ago and how they're still influencing us today. So during the session, and maybe also as an exercise just to do some writing, I want you to reflect on the creative people in your life when you were young. So like from infancy to maybe like 7 years old. Were there any teachers that you found really inspiring? How did they relate to their creativity? Was it maybe a friend's mom that dressed really nicely or wore a lot of jewelry and were very expressive in their mannerisms? Did you have a creative relative or few? And write a bit about how they related to their creativity and how you understood their creativity. So, for example, my grandmother is an extremely creative person. This is a true story. I'm not making this up. She actually taught me how to paint, and we did a lot of painting things when I visited her on the farm. But she was constantly interrupted in her daily life by things she had to do in the household and on the farm, and then started many times trying to paint and paint and paint, and then she would commit to classes or she'd do a book course and she'd get really into it, and then something will come in the way and she'll have to stop with that and do something else. So subconsciously I learned from this experience and looking up to my grandmother as an artist so much when I was young, that sometimes there are other things like laundry and it's more important than your creativity. And this might be so for some people, but for me as a person trying to connect to my creativity, later in my life I could then start witnessing how I am taking myself out of the creative space to do household tasks or other things that is maybe more important or more responsible to do. And this pattern of disrupting myself and taking myself out of the space was not healthy for my creativity and became a block. Okay, so that's one story that you can relate back to your creative ancestry. Another story is that there was this teacher when I was in primary school that had very specific ideas on how you draw. I can't even remember what, but I just remember her like being very specific. Hands was one thing. Like I drew these stick hands and she's like, no, you can see your pinky finger is smaller, your thumb, it looks like this. Try to draw it in a different way. And there's a very instructional way that we work at the moment with creativity and education, and sometimes that bars inspiration and the freedom to express whatever is real to you. So then I had this whole block around painting faces for a long time because of that person that I admired, that was this very like art teacher telling me, no, it should be done this and this and this way. So she had also had some very specific ideas and maybe also was a hurt artist or a block artist in her own way and brought that to the classroom. Okay, so we're not demonizing those people, because you might have beautiful stories of people that you admire and that were healthy artists, but we're just trying to see where our blocks potentially can come from. Okay, So I would suggest a writing exercise, kind of reflecting a bit on the people in your life that were creative and the stories that you learned around them, and maybe what people said about them or what your parents said about them. Maybe that being an artist is irresponsible, or it's not so important to draw all the time, things like that. Okay, and then we're going to do a collage. But before I give you the collage prompts, I want you to close your eyes. Find a comfortable seat, a relaxed, upright posture, and just start breathing deeply and easily. You can start to bring that feeling of dropping into your body, dropping into sensation that we practiced yesterday to your meditation practice now. So you can feel your feet planted on the ground or on the cushion. Feel your seat. Feel your shoulders relaxed. Imagine you are floating in water, and every inhalation and exhalation is a wave that you're riding. You're just resting in the water, letting the water carry you up and down. Really connect to the movement of your chest, the movement of your entire body when you're breathing. Imagine that from below the surface of the water, something is surfacing next to you. Something that is standing in your way of being more creative. Maybe it's lack of time. Don't think too much about what shape it takes. Just let this visualization of something coming to the surface next to you happen. Let your imagination guide you. And witness what comes up. What is standing in your way? Look at it. It's in the water, in this body of water that you are also floating in, but it is not you. It might be a thought, a story, a physical thing, a person. Sometimes our blocks become so part of us that we forget that they are stories and that they are figments of our imagination. They're in the mind. The lack of time, for example, is a story we tell ourselves. And the moment we allow that story to not be true and not have a hold of our life, time comes out of nowhere. And once you've really looked at this thing, witnessed this thing, you can let it drop into the water again and sink away. Do this again. See if there's anything else that needs to surface. Maybe it's profession and your job peeks out beneath the waves from the surface of the water, and you see how that story limits you. You see how you are connected by the water, but it is not you. And when you're ready, you can let that drop away as well. Feel how you are as light as a feather on the waves, floating. Breathing in the body, present, mindful of the subtle movements in your body, the blood coursing through your veins, the air moving, your tummy growling, the temperature change, where the air meets your skin. Set an intention now to release what no longer serves you, to let it sink away as easily as something heavy in water. And then you can wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, stretch your body, and open your eyes. Alright, so now I'm going to talk you through a collage that you're going to make representing your creative ancestry. So all these elements that make up where you are today with your creative life. All the stories, all the experiences, the good, the bad, the blocks, the sadness, the hurt, anything, everything you're going to put in this collage. Okay? So the first step is to page through a magazine. So I'm going to show you an example. I just want to get the light right. There we go. I'm going to show you an example while I talk through this. So I have already covered this with some plastic because I really like this collage. And here you can see there's big strips of paper in the background and big chunks that I've cut out, tore out. So that's the first step. And here you can also see I've done the same but in a kind of mosaic style. So this is the second part. So first you work with bigger areas and then you work with smaller bits that you kind of collage, adding texture to your page. And you can think about composition or you can just work abstractly. You can see that this is kind of a landscape collage, but this one is very abstract and I just did it very intuitively. Okay, so that's the first step, and then you can pause the video and you can continue when you've done that, kind of just filling up some areas with big strips of paper. The next step of your collage is to cut out shapes of your own. You see, so you choose a page that you really like and you cut out a shape, maybe even a form of something more realistic, and you stick that in between as well, adding to your composition by creating your own forms. Here's another example of that. This mountain range here below was cut out of a page to create that idea of a mountain. Okay, so you use a strip of paper and I cut first this layer and then that layer and then that layer, and then I stuck them down in order, and then you get this kind of effect of creating your own shapes. And then lastly, you're going to cut out, perfect cutouts it's called, when you use the image that you've taken out of the magazine and you cut them out in a perfect way like this, preserving the entire image, and you're going to add that to your collage as well. Here you can see I used an entire image out of a magazine and just kept it like that, and when you look far away it seems like it becomes part of the composition completely, and if you look closely you'll see that it is a preserved image. It's a whole image that I added. Okay, and in this way you just keep building up the collage, pausing between the prompts and really allowing the composition to take shape and creating an image that represents your creative ancestry. And lastly, you can add a symbol of maybe your creative intention, like the sun that I added there shining over this landscape, or in this one, the eye, the all-seeing eye, kind of to me also represents my creative potential. I hope you enjoy this video and that you have a beautiful, beautiful day.